Former acting secretary of the Department of Homeland Security and executive director and chair at the Center for Homeland Security and Immigration at the America First Policy Institute, Chad Wolf. Good morning, Chad. Good to see you. So, what took Los Angeles so long? It took them days to get the police organized, to do curfews. Why are they always behind the eight ball?
Well, I think they're always behind the eight ball, much like Portland and Seattle and others are, which is it's their general outlook on these types of issues and allowing these violent protesters to continue day after day after day. I think back to 2020 when I had a discussion with the Oregon governor, and she said, basically, just let it play out. Just let it, let the destruction happen. And I think President Trump and his team are saying, not this time around. We saw what happened in 2020 in places like Minneapolis and Portland and elsewhere when we left it to city officials who did nothing. And they're just not doing that this time around. So the idea is to send in an overwhelming number of law enforcement, which they have done and will continue to do until it's under control.
Yeah, and it's really remarkable when you hear L.A. Mayor Karen Bass actually say, well, if you stop doing the ICE raids, then none of this would be happening.
Yeah.
But these are criminals. These aren't just illegals who are here. They are hardened criminals and accused of heinous crimes that are being removed.
Well, that's exactly right. Look, the mayor is on the wrong side of this issue, on the wrong side of history. I've called for her resignation. What she has basically said is law enforcement shouldn't do their job. We should allow criminals to remain in Los Angeles because we're just too sensitive. We're too sensitive to allow law enforcement to come in here and do their job and remove bad people from our community. And if that's your mayor, you've got a problem.
I want to shift now to this weekend, Chad. You've got the No Kings protests in hundreds of cities going across the country. At the same time, you have many liberals that are already aggravated and popping up counter-protests in New York, Chicago, Dallas, in other places. This seems to be a recipe that could be fraught with danger heading into the weekend.
Well, I think that's right. Look, again, if individuals want to protest nonviolently to express their opinions, they're welcome to do that. And law enforcement across this country are trained to allow them to do that. The issue here, Mark, and as you know, is when that turns violent. And we see that a lot of violent opportunists and agitators will embed themselves into these, quote, protests, and they become violent very quickly. And that's what law enforcement needs to get under control, and I think that's why they're being deployed. But look, the rhetoric here from the left is the instigator in all of this. For years, they have vilified ICE. They've called them the KKK, stormtroopers. I think Governor Walz just a couple of weeks ago referred to them as a modern-day Gestapo. Right. And so you have this rhetoric coming, and then they wonder why everyday Americans get so passionate when they see ICE in their communities. Well, they've been told that they're the enemy, when in fact they are not. They are actually just fulfilling what Congress has told them to do. So a lot of these lawmakers on the left have a lot of I would say guilt here and are to blame for what we see today.
Yeah, I asked Governor Stitt of Oklahoma in this in the last segment, but do you think that the Justice Department, Attorney General Bondi, should launch an investigation into who's financing these? When you see professional-grade masks being delivered, pallets of bricks being delivered, someone's obviously funding all of this activity.
Oh, without a doubt. They should certainly look into that. Now, look, I give AG Bondi a lot of credit for what she's doing thus far, as well as the FBI director and others. This is what we did not have in 2020, unfortunately, which is enforcement of the laws and prosecution, right, which equals consequences. And so I think what we see thus far is a good sign. They need to continue those investigations and prosecutions. People need to be held accountable for their actions.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.